Hi, everyone. Welcome to Career Lab's second live session. This is going to be our Q&A with the recruiter. Before we start our sessions, we always do a quick rundown of what your previous tasks look like and what's coming up. So let me share my screen real quick and get that on there. Here we go. Nope, that's not it. There's too many tabs open, too many tabs. Okay, that's it. Okay, so this is our repo. And we've got all of our things laid out, whether they're synchronous or asynchronous. Hopefully you've gotten started on some of your LinkedIn prep, which is what to put in your profile, what to include, how to tell your story. You may have read ahead, and that's fine too. Today's session is terrific because it's going to let you ask those questions of, do I really need this? How would you recommend I do that? Things like that from a pro. Just so you know, every time we have a session, I'll put the recording in. So this was our kickoff. And so the YouTube link is right there. So that's the case. So if you can't make it to a future session that you're interested in, you've got a link here to see our Zoom recording. Okay. Just keep doing the same thing. If you want to learn about your finances, because hopefully you're going to start getting fat paychecks, come see me on Wednesday later in the day. And then we don't have anything until week 2, which is all about the interview. So I'm going to stop. I know that was really, really fast, but we haven't done that much yet, right? It's early and you're all done. I just realized you're all probably done with your shopping list demo. So congratulations. I know that is so much fun. You've accomplished something great and you can talk about it now in interviews. It's the number one thing people wanted to talk to me about was that project. And it's the most authentic since boot camp. So definitely mine it for stories and interview question answers. Okay, without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Yosha for Q&A with our recruiter. Oh, and I'll monitor the chat, so you don't have to worry about it. If anyone has questions, I'll try and answer them or we'll save them. And no, we don't have to save them. This is a Q&A. Cool. Take it away.
Awesome. Thank you everyone for joining today. I'm just going to give you a brief introduction, who I am, what I've done in the past, and what I'm hoping to be able to provide you all. So I've been a recruiter in the tech industry for a little bit over 7 years, and I've worked at some small startups. I've also worked at larger organizations. I've helped quite a few organizations also grow their engineering teams, supporting with intern hiring. So I'm hoping whatever information I can provide today is going to be helpful when you are navigating that job search. I do want to be mindful that obviously, the last couple of years have been really challenging for a lot of folks in tech, as we're seeing a lot of layoffs. A lot of people are applying to the same company. So you're seeing an influx of resumes compared to what we used to see before. So, before we jump into any of your questions, I just want to make sure that you're all giving yourself grace as you're taking this new step in this journey. And I hope that I can maybe make it a little bit easier for all of you. Oh, and yeah, if you have any questions, please jump in.
I guess I'll start with a question since I don't see anyone's hands raised. I do have kind of a question. So I'm currently employed, and on LinkedIn, I'm a little bit leery as far as like how, adding that open to work, badge and what kind of updates I do make. In fact, for a long time, I was keeping my LinkedIn kind of private because I didn't maybe want them to know all of the things that I was doing as far as like my boot camp went and things like that. And I did have some of them request me eventually, and so now they're they're in the loop. But I am curious how it works because my profile still is set to private. Do most recruiters have that pre-exits where they can see it no matter what, or is it really just hurting me to have it like that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Christina. So, a few things to be aware of. Depending of the size of the organization that the recruiter is working at, usually mid to larger size companies will give folks LinkedIn Premium so that they can at least, or LinkedIn Recruiter, for example, so that they can see your full profile, even though you have it set it to private. Um, However, if there are smaller organizations that may not be able to afford that LinkedIn Premium or LinkedIn Recruiter, it does, I don't want to say hurt you, but it won't, it makes it a little bit limited in terms of what they can see and how they can contact you. What I would advise just moving forward, obviously based on how comfortable you are, the information that you put on your LinkedIn is just so that it makes it easier for you to be searchable when we are doing, searches for specific skill sets or specific technologies, etc. We want to make it easier for folks to be able to find you as well. So kind of like a reciprocal relationship with that. So what I would advise, if you are open to also maybe working at smaller companies as well as larger organizations, um, um, make your LinkedIn open to everyone and share the information that you feel comfortable sharing. Was that helpful?
It is. It's helpful.
Okay,
Thank you.
awesome. And yeah, please feel free if you have any follow-up questions, just to jump in there.
Perfect. Thank you.
No problem. And is it Shannon? I apologize ahead of time. Okay, awesome. Of
Yeah, yep, it's Shannon. Hi, thank you for being here.
course.
My question is, when I'm on LinkedIn searching for roles, when I reach out to a recruiter, like, hey, I have zero idea what to say. Like, do I say, because like my nature is like, hey, this job looks awesome. But maybe refine that. And then do you like put a link to your resume? Like, what's a good message on LinkedIn to a recruiter? Like, what would it make you interested to talk to me?
Yeah, great question. So what I would say is to be aware that there are probably also a lot of folks that are reaching out to recruiters specifically.
Right.
And they may or may not be able to get to your message, just depending on how many folks have reached out to them. Usually the value add that you want to add in your message is saying, hey, I saw this job description based off of my skill set, based off of my experience, or based off of my project work. I could be a really, really great match for this. Link your portfolio or any work that you've done. So it makes it easier for them to just click, have a quick look, and then you're set. And at that point, they can decide to take the conversation further. Something I actually just thought about for folks that are in the stage where you are, transitioning into a different career path and you're looking for opportunities. I actually wrote a note about this. I'm just going to pull up my phone really quickly, so I'm not ignoring you, I promise.
Oh, thank you.
No problem. So I was thinking, okay, what is a creative way to get in front of or to maybe potentially have a conversation with someone who is making the decision, the hiring decision? What I would say is that, yes, you can reach out to the recruiter, but maybe taking it a step further, trying to find the engineering managers that work at that company, because they also know exactly what they're looking for. And it's very likely that they're maybe not getting as many reach outs as the recruiters are, because usually folks think, okay, let me reach out to the recruiter first, right? Which makes sense.
Right.
But yeah, you could take it a step further, find out the engineering manager that works at that organization. And even I'm thinking right now, when I'm seeing the amount of applications going to a lot of like the mid to large size companies, there's quite a few, right? So you want to set yourself apart. If you're open to it, you can try to target maybe the smaller companies that don't have as many folks in the seat. And you can offer your value add would be like, hey, you can maybe do a little bit of research on the company. It doesn't need to be extensive. I really, really like this about this product or your organization or the direction that you're heading. Here's my portfolio, and I would love to contribute to the success of your company. How can I help? Keeping it as open as that, maybe they'd be open to bringing you on as an intern or maybe even a short-term contract where it gives yourself some time where okay, I can contribute in this way for this time frame. And you never know, it might open up into a full-time role, or they might extend your contract, or if they're not hiring, they probably have a network of other folks that they can also reach out to saying, hey, I worked with Shannon. She did an incredible job. We don't have any openings right now, but they would also help you navigate that next step. So just try to find some ways that you can be creative. It does require a little bit of like detective work, finding out what companies, how many employees there are. But hopefully with that pre-work ahead of time, it'll help you get to where you need to be.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you.
No problem.
I have a question for you that kind of goes off of what Christina was asking. What is your opinion? And I know there's a diversity of opinions on the green open for work banner. Good, bad, anywhere. Just what do you think about it?
Yeah. I personally don't have a strong opinion for or against it. I think as a recruiter, it's a great way to see, okay, this person wants to talk to me. Whereas maybe some folks are not looking for that. And it takes away the guessing work for me as a recruiter. Now I do want to advise, unfortunately, there are some organizations where they have views on being open to work as not necessarily a great thing. I would say those are probably organizations where maybe your values don't align anyway. So be mindful of that. Always go in with doing the thing that makes you the most comfortable and representing yourself in the most authentic way. And then that way, the organizations that you want to work at will align with your values as well. And so hopefully you can avoid any sort of toxic environments, which can take a huge toll on your overall well-being. We don't want that. And it requires a little bit of trial and error. But for me personally, I'm not against it. I'm not strongly for it either. I think it's just, again, a matter of preference, but it does make it easier for the recruiter to see, hey, I can have a conversation with this person. Yes, Christina.
Sorry, I've got lots of questions.
Yeah, no, apologies. That's
The
what I'm
next
here
one
for.
is kind of if you could kind of give us an idea of like what the communication looks like leading up a lot of times to an interview or a phone call or something like that. I unfortunately encountered this last week 2 different scams on applications I had applied for. And I had checked to make sure that the emails said that they were from the particular company, and I had visited their websites and checked to make sure that there were open positions. But it seemed to be that was something that we're just taking advantage of. In the end, none of the people who were contacting me were actually working or listed as working on the company, and it ended up being but the first thing I noticed that they both did was they sent me a survey to kind of get to know more information about me. Is that pretty typical, or is that something like, is there something that we should be, I don't know, it's kind of a hard question because I know it's not something you would do, but if you could kind of inform us on the process a little bit more, maybe it can help protect us from those kind of situations.
Absolutely. First of all, I'm so sorry that happened to you. That's such a shame. And I'm hearing quite a bit of this happening as well. Now, as a recruiter, the first thing that I would do when I am interested in having a conversation with someone, let's say they've applied, right? I would set up either a phone conversation to get to know that individual a little bit better. Now, usually what also happens is through the application process, there's standard questions that are included in the application process, right? Maybe where are you located? What excited you about the position, that kind of thing. We're not going to ask very personal or sensitive information. So what I would say to avoid maybe any sort of issues moving forward, when you do get a reach out and they're asking you to fill out the survey, the first thing I would personally do is let me look up this company. Let me look up this person that has reached out to me. Are they actually working at this organization? And before I even, let's say, for example, in your situation, if before I submit any sort of information, I would ask them, okay, who's the hiring manager of this position? just so that, you know, find out as much information as possible so that you can also verify it on your end and use LinkedIn to say, oh, okay, perfect. This person actually works here. They've been working here for X amount of years or X amount of months, so that you feel comfortable moving forward. This one is a little bit tricky because, you know, unfortunately, the scams get realer and realer and more like harder to kind of distinguish between what's real and what's not. But as long as you're finding ways to do your due diligence, and LinkedIn is a really great resource for that, to make sure that these people that say that they work there are actually working there, it'll at least give you some peace of mind to decide whether or not you want to move forward.
Yeah, they were actually quite tricky about it because the surveys were good questions. There were questions about, you know, your tech experience, collaboration, all of those things. But the kicker was when I got an offer letter right after submitting the survey, and they wanted to get my info for, you know, onboarding. So, you know, I
Like,
nodded
you knew it was
along
going to
and with
take longer.
my
Yeah, right. That in itself, right, is a red flag. It's like, well, we
yeah.
haven't spoken about
Yeah.
this, any of the information I've shared with you. So how are you so confident in giving me
Yeah.
this offer letter, right? But yeah, for folks who have maybe not gone through a full interview experience, it may seem like, okay, well, I've given them the information that they've asked for in the survey, so of course this makes sense. And we want to try and avoid having anyone go through that all the way and then have a really negative experience. But also there's only so much you can do, you know?
I've done 2 job search in tech now, one fresh out of boot camp, and then my second job search. And it has definitely changed. Those are just a year between. So my thing after getting caught in one of them, is if I get a cold, contact from a recruiter, I always just respond with the email. This sounds so interesting. Can you tell me the tech stack? Or if they included the tech stack, this sounds so interesting. Can you tell me the X? Whatever it is. And they never respond. And that's how you know. Because I couldn't keep track of did I do a LinkedIn easy apply? And I just didn't write it down in my spreadsheet. Because you never know for sure, because they are using really high quality job descriptions. They've got their fake email addresses. So when I couldn't find, one even had someone's name. So it's like he was a hiring manager at a legit company and the job sounded wonderful, but I'm like, I didn't apply for this. I know I didn't apply for this. So that's what I did. I sent my little response email of, oh, can you just tell me X? And never heard from them again. And they were really interested in me, they would have responded, right?
Absolutely would have. And that's a great, great point, Shelley. That's a great one. Because usually, you know, with these kinds of postings or, you know, these illegitimate, fake kind of scamming uh opportunities, they don't want to waste time having to explain anything to you, right? They're just hoping that you're excited and then you're ready to move forward. So the more work that you ask for them to do, the more likely it is, exactly like what you're saying, you know, they're probably not going to respond, and then that way, you know, okay, good thing I didn't move forward with that.
And if they're a real recruiter, they're happy to just,
Absolutely.
then copy and paste the good job description or whatever. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Also, don't ever apply for patterned AI. It is definitely a scam, and I do not know why LinkedIn won't get rid of them. I think they're just trying to get, data for their AI, but yeah. They have the same jobs posted forever and you never hear from them again, and it's totally a scam.
Oh, wow. That's really, really good to know. Hi.
Hi, thank you for being here.
Of
So I'm
course.
a self-taught dev, and I know that I need more experience to prove my skills. And I'm super fortunate to have Collab Lab on my resume. And I'm wondering, like, for your experience, what would make a self-taught dev stand out in the pool of like CS degree graduates and bootcamp grads? Like, do you think open source project or even like unpaid internship or volunteer experience would help?
Yeah, that's a great question. So open source projects are really, really great. And I remember when I was hiring for engineering or folks that are just kind of breaking into the industry, what was really cool to see was their variety of projects that they had worked on. And that can be, I personally think unpaid internships should be illegal because you're doing work and you need to get paid for it. Um, there are opportunities where you can use platforms such as Upwork or Fiverr to offer your services and say, hey, this is the work that I can do. Charge a competitive rate as you're getting started. And then that way, you'll have folks willing to reach out to you saying, hey, this is what I want to do. You can kind of give them an overview of the opportunity or the work that you can do for them. And the more comfortable you get with working with a variety of clients, it also shows your ability to be adaptable, and also manage different projects at the same time, which is a really, really great skill set. And then that way, once you've completed a project for a client, that's something that you can leverage on your portfolio, kind of walking folks through, hey, this was the project, this was the challenge, this is how I solved it. And your documentation along the way is going to be really important, right? So, along with, being really comfortable with the tech stack, your ability to communicate any sort of challenges that you also came across in your experience would definitely set you apart. But yeah, I think, again, I don't recommend unpaid internships. I think organizations have enough money to pay you. They should. And getting creative on offering your services in different platforms like Fiverr or Upwork, I think would give you a little bit of an advantage, so that yes, you may not have a full-time job yet, but you have quite a bit of experience working on different projects.
Thank you.
No problem.
I've got one that's aligned to that. I'm not naming names, but there's someone out there who tells new devs, especially self-taught devs, to get a business license and, call it, Shelley's Tech Solutions. And then whatever projects you're doing, are technically you're hiring yourself to do. Seems a little, I don't know. And then the taxes might be weird, but you could also, so I don't know if you think that sounds like a good idea or if it's too obviously fake. Also, you could always just ask a friend who has something related to a business saying, can I build you a website? Even if they don't use the website for anything, you build them a website and you can put it down as, professional work, and you can, oh, I know what, sorry, I'm forgetting the whole story. The reason why you do your own company is because then you can put months, then years of experience because you're the CEO of said company. Sounds a little shady, but interesting. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that's actually a great idea, because you are, aside from being able to at least get some tax benefits from what you're doing, right? It shows that you've taken the initiative, you've started something on your own, you're tapping into your entrepreneurial spirit, which creates for a great story in the interview process. And I recall when I was working at Shopify in particular as a recruiter, the entire business model is about empowering entrepreneurs. So that's a great story where you could be like, hey, yeah, I actually started my own company, and this is the work that I did, and these are some of the challenges that I ran into. So yes, it creates a great story. It may work for some companies, it may not work for other organizations, but at the same time, it's a great idea. Yes.
Sorry.
No, no apologies needed.
The whole experience thing led to another one of my questions that I had actually. When I finished my boot camp, they actually suggested that we included in our resume our boot camp experience as like work experience. And I felt two ways about it, quite honestly. It does say student developer on it, but I kind of wondered from a recruiter standpoint how that's taken, you know, and also when it comes to the application process, a lot of times they're like, well, give us, you know, your experience and all of my formal experience, you know, and it's always about jobs. It's never about like it being unpaid. Unfortunately, there's not a checkbox for that. Same thing with the education, not a checkbox for boot camps. But you know, how should we go about that on our resumes? Is it seen badly if it is put the same way that we have everything else on our work experience, or should it clearly be labeled? You know, it does say student developer, so I mean, obviously there's that. But how is that seen kind of by recruiters?
Yeah, that's a really great question. This one is a little bit tricky, because depending on the context that you're providing, it could potentially be confusing for the recruiter or the hiring manager reviewing the resume. However, as you mentioned, if you put student developer, then it's clearly indicated, okay, this was part of your boot camp, this is the work that you did do, and this is the experience that you do have. At that point, it'll be up to the discretion of the person reviewing your resume to be like, okay, this works. Especially for something like an internship, or if you're maybe looking for a contract position. I don't see the harm in doing that. Again, because the goal is not to obviously be misleading, it is work experience. And I think as long as you're providing the context, you should be fine.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to make sure. I had looked up, you know, different articles on it, and some people were saying, well, no, it's clearly misguiding because it's not work experience, but you did work on these projects and it is stuff
Right.
that you did. And so I just
Right.
wanted to know, get another perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all about how you communicate that, right? A lot of the miscommunication can be removed with additional context, and you could absolutely add that there.
Thank you.
No problem.
We've also all landed on apprenticeship for our
Yes.
Collab experience. We definitely put that in there as a 2-month apprenticeship. Don't have to say whether it was paid or not. That has nothing to do with
Exactly. The fact is you worked on it.
it. Mhm.
Any other questions, thoughts even?
I know a question that comes up a lot for people is applying through LinkedIn posts equivalent, better, worse, versus going straight to the company's website? You know, do you have any opinions or advice about that?
Yeah. So, as a recruiter, we view applications coming in from the company website or LinkedIn, for example, essentially as the same. Sometimes, however, LinkedIn, when you apply through LinkedIn, the information doesn't get parsed properly in our application tracking system, right? So you want to be a little bit mindful of that. So if you want to take the guesswork out of it and, you know, maybe guarantee like, okay, my name is going to show up as my name, my experience is going to show up as my experience. I personally, if you know, when I'm going to apply, I would see the job on LinkedIn and then I'll just go apply on the company website, because there's a less of a chance of my resume or anything on my resume or any of the links that I've included get kind of, you know, mixed up with anything else, because I don't exactly know how the parsing works from LinkedIn to the company's applicant tracking system. But again, I'm like, I always want to take 3 or 4 steps to make sure that I'm getting the information in the right way to the person that needs to see it. It's not mandatory. Definitely matter of personal preference, because on the other end, as a recruiter, if we do see any sort of like issues with the resume that's come in through LinkedIn, it's not a big deal. It's something that we can fix. But I think for me, personal preference, just go on the company website. If you see the posting on LinkedIn, apply directly.
I actually have a question with regards to something similar to that.
Oh.
So my resume is a PDF, but I built it on Figma because I wanted to, make it pretty and all of that stuff. But I'm kind of wondering if from a recruiter's perspective, that was maybe not the best way. Maybe it would have been better to actually just go with a Word doc. And even though it just doesn't stand out as much, because sometimes I notice that like I'll do the apply and it won't read my resume correctly and fill in the different fields. How is that kind of viewed? Is it something that you would prefer to have just a plain, I mean, I guess, is that even a relevant thing in the tech world? Should your resume stand out visually the way that they've always told us that it needs to be, attractive to the eye, pop? Or is it just all about using that readability and the screen readers for filters and stuff?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So there's a few things that come to mind for me. Now, it obviously depends on the type of role that you're looking for, right? So if there is a position where you're reading the job description and they've indicated, this person is also going to be focusing on the UI. So there's maybe a creative element, a design element that is required for this position. I think having a resume built in Figma would be really awesome. However, exactly like what you mentioned, some of the challenge that maybe you ran into in applying, the readability might make it a little bit difficult. And instead of that recruiter being able to reach out to you right away, it adds an extra step for them to reach out to you, say, hey, there are some errors that maybe came up in your resume. Can you resubmit that? Now, mind you, they're probably also speaking to a few other folks. So we want to remove that extra step and we want them to be able to reach out to you right away to have a conversation about your experience. So as I've gone through in my role as a recruiter, looking at different creative resumes, I think it's really great to see someone who's focused a little bit more on the design. It's not a requirement. It's not it's not mandatory. But when I think about how quickly I would want to reach out to someone and not have any obstacles come in the way, just a matter of readability, I would say keep your resume simple, right? Indicate your experience. You can maybe add a little bit of color in terms of the text or a little bit of a creative element that way using, PDF. And then pour in all of your creativity into your portfolio and your website. That way it allows me to, so for example, if I'm looking at your resume, I'm like, oh, this perfect, know exactly what the experience is. This is super simple to read. Our applicant tracking system has been able to process the information as well with no issues. Now there's a link to your portfolio on your resume. Let me look into your experience a little bit further. Now I'm like, oh, it's a great surprise. Like, wow, you put in so much effort into the design, the usability, and just the overall function of your website and your portfolio, which is going to make me want to have a conversation with you. So that's how I view it. And essentially, just to summarize what my recommendation would be, just keep your resume simple and add all of your flair, all of your personality into your website and portfolio. No problem. Is it Raquel?
Yes, thank you for being here. So I have a question for people who have a huge gap in their resume. Should we add that to our resume, or should just the LinkedIn part, for whatever reason the gap was? But
Yeah.
yeah.
So, it's a great question. Now, without obviously share whatever you feel comfortable sharing with, the gap in your resume, is that just due to personal reasons? You just decide to take some time off, or figure something else out, because there's a way that you can position that. And in my experience, really great organizations that have solid cultures, they're not going to penalize for you. They're not going to penalize you for pivoting in a different direction, or maybe having to take care of something that pulled you away from work. So obviously it's a very personal decision, right? So for someone like myself, I actually quit my last recruitment job a little bit over a year and a half ago. And I've been doing my own thing, started my own business, doing a little bit of creative work. And I also took a break to travel, right? Now, for some folks where maybe the information's a little bit sensitive, maybe there was a health concern, or maybe you had to take care of a family member, these are things that you don't have to put on your resume. It's a matter of saying, yeah, just maybe took some time off, wanted to travel, wanted to explore different crafts. And then I decided to come back, and now I'm looking for something full time. Any respectable organization and a respectable recruiter is not going to pry about that. Does that answer your question, Raquel? Do you have any follow-up questions about that?
No, that answered perfectly. Thank you.
Problem.
We just hit the 1 minute mark, so that's probably time for one more question, but just wanted to warn everyone we might get cut off. Does anyone want to ask one last zinger?
Should we worry about levels of proficiencies? I know we're always adding to different stacks. Like, I work with buckets, but that doesn't mean I'm an AWS, but those keywords also count. Where do we draw the line on misleading versus, valid?
Yeah,
Right.
that's a really great question. If you've worked on it, you've worked on it. If you work with it, you work with it. And there are folks out there that even if they've maybe used something once, they still will have the confidence to be like, yeah, I used it. I tried it. Go for it. Doesn't mean that you're not able to learn.